Welcome to The Future and You. This episode is for September 24, 2008. I am your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. Our guest today is Larry Niven. In addition to being my favorite author for the last 29 years, Larry Niven is the one author more than any other whose writing style I tried to emulate back in 1992 when I was working on my very first science fiction novel. Perhaps his best-known work is Ringworld, which received Hugo, Locus, Ditmar, and Nebula awards, and which I have read 7 times. Its sequel, Ringworld Engineers, I have read only 5 times. His work is primarily hard science fiction, using big science concepts and theoretical physics. It also often includes elements of detective fiction and adventure stories. His fantasy includes the Magic Goes Away series, rational fantasy dealing with magic as a non-renewable resource. He also writes humorous stories. One series is collected in The Flight of the Horse. He has also collaborated with a number of other authors. He and Jerry Pournelle, for example, wrote The Mote in God's Eye, which I have read 3 times, and Footfall and Lucifer's Hammer, each of which I have read once. In today's interview, he covers a wide variety of futuristic topics and surprises me with a few unexpected concepts and ideas. But first, one item of news. On the evening of September 17, 2008, my computer crashed, and I mean crashed bad. It's some kind of hard drive failure. It won't boot at all. I thought I was safe because I bought the machine with a RAID drive, R-A-I-D, which means it actually incorporates 2 drives, which each store a copy of all my data. That way, if either copy gets corrupted, it can be repaired using the good copy. This has worked beautifully several times, in sudden power outages from thunderstorms, for example, but it's apparently not of any value if the entire drive stops working. The machine is a Hewlett-Packard Pavilion desktop with 4 gig of RAM running Windows Vista. I've had it for a year and a half, so it's still under the 3-year extended warranty that I paid extra for. After spending a couple of hours on the phone with the HP tech support people, eliminating all the things that the problem might be, they decided to send me a box to put the tower in so I can ship it to them for them to fix it. They say I will be without it for about 10 or 12 days. I may even lose all my data. I don't know yet. I've backed up a lot of stuff to CDs, but there's a lot of stuff that's not backed up. In order to survive 12 days without my computer, I have resurrected my old computer. It's a Gateway which runs Windows XP and has only 256 meg of RAM, a 1/16 of the RAM that I'm accustomed to. But at least I'm online, I can get my email, and I can still produce the show. Also, I have a good habit of burning backups of interviews immediately after I hang up the phone with a guest, so I haven't lost any of those. Once I get my HP computer back, I'm going to get a better backup system, possibly one of those external hard drives designed specifically for backups. And now, the only listener feedback I have on hand, since the rest are all in my dead computer. David Hughes wrote, "Hi Steve, just wanted you to know that your TFA podcast is now a firm favorite in this house. I am sincerely glad that I found your show. You don't hear this kind of cutting-edge science anywhere in the UK. Please keep up the good work. Best wishes, David Hughes." And now, on to our interview. Here is Larry Niven. The Sinclair molecule chain that you wrote about decades ago sounds remarkably like nanotechnology. Do you think we will develop materials that strong, maybe even something kind of similar to the Sinclair molecule chain?
Let me put it this way. First off, I was stealing Thin Edge from Randall Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to guess how it would be done, and nanotechnology maybe wasn't even a word yet, but it seemed like the way to go. Work the threads one molecule at a time.
Some of the properties of the Sinclair molecule chain were a little unusual. I think it was superconducting of heat. That's probably not going to play out, I imagine.
I threw that in, if I threw it in. I don't actually remember. But
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I messed up. The reason it was superconducting of heat was because you had taken the room temperature superconductor and wrapped it around the Sinclair molecule chain.
And even so, I seem to remember somebody speculating working out that these fibers would be superconducting of heat.
Oh, okay, okay.
If it had gone in, it would have come right out of the literature.
Ah, okay. I imagine you probably read a great deal of science fact in order to keep your stories on track, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
You asked if I thought we'll eventually have Sinclair molecule chain or thin edge or whatever other science fiction writers have called it. John Brunner used it too. Yes, it's so useful that I am sure it will eventually be made. And that's a very dangerous thing because, of course, it makes a great weapon.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious about the room temperature superconductor that you developed for, I believe it was first introduced in Ringworld Engineers, but they seem to be moving in that direction, or they were for a while. Yeah, I mean, in actual research. But then they seem to have hit a kind of a stymie a few years ago.
Sure, but I've got 100 years to work with.
True, true. So, yeah, I'm sure they haven't given up on it yet.
And it's another of these things that people will work on until they get it. You see, that's one valid way to predict the future. Find the things that people will work on until they get it. Longevity, fast learning techniques, fast teaching techniques, automobiles that run on water. All you've got to do is guess what it'll look like and how far into the future you have to reach to get it.
Okay, okay. One of the materials that you described in Ringworld was called Skrith, which has a tensile strength as strong as the nuclear binding force. I'm guessing that's pretty much out of the question, though.
That's pretty much out of the question, but it is what you need to build a Ringworld.
Is that why you came up with that being that strong?
I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher in England came up with that.
Oh, okay.
I got a lot of letters after I wrote Ringworld, and that was one of the that was part of the fallout.
Yeah, you're quoted as saying that people were sending you information as though it was a research project or a construction project that had already been planned or was in the planning stage.
Yeah, that's the way it was.
I'm curious about the wireheading stuff. That's been I've interviewed a few people that have talked about wireheading as something that's may actually come to fruition.
Again, that's right out of the literature. There was a certain amount of probing into the brains of rats and men to find out what parts of the brain do what. And one part was apparently goes to a pleasure center. And let's see, there was a mainstream book written under the premise that yes, there's a drop to the pleasure center, but it's too close to the center that causes epilepsy.
Mm.
And the guy was turning into an epileptic murderer. Yeah, I've forgotten its title, the title, but good book.
Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate that this is something that might actually become a problem within human culture, an addiction?
I did once upon a time. I'm starting to wonder if we aren't going in another direction. See, there's no entertainment value in the pleasure center stimulation. We seem to be going toward virtual reality. And if pleasure center stimulation goes into an all sensory game, that could be the end of civilization. Or it might just take out the lazy ones among us.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What's your take on virtual reality? And I guess you're thinking mostly the communal versions of virtual reality, kind of like Second Life and such.
I've noticed those. Communal versions of communication are good. In fact, they're the best answer to the problem of getting oil from the Arabs. Don't bother with the oil, don't bother with the gasoline, don't bother with transportation very much. We'd still be able to use transportation when necessary, but for communication, there's no real need to go anywhere.
Yeah, I've already noticed in myself that I can go to meetings and go to conferences within Second Life. I've been in there for since the beginning of this year that I never would have been able to go to otherwise because they're dealing with people in Europe or Asia, and it really opens up a lot of opportunities for me.
Yeah, I haven't made much use of Second Life myself or its ilk, but I've noticed.
I'm still learning about it. I still have a little ways to go. There are some people who believe that virtual realities, as our computers and stuff like that get better, but they will become integrated into our regular reality, so that you'll be able to, say, walk into an office and talk to somebody who's not even there, but far away.
Yeah,
What's your take on that? Do you feel that's a good thing? Is it a
it's a good thing.
okay?
Communications is good. Of course, it's also one of those tools that can be misused. Um, lots of inventions can be used for good or evil.
hmm There's I've heard a phrase, I forget, I can't exactly quote it, but basically it says that at first nations became global, then corporations became global, and now people, individuals, are becoming global. I think I'm beginning to see a little bit of that as interacting with people, globally rather than just locally.
All right, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's a true statement. Even when I was growing up, there were kids were encouraged to have pen pals in other countries. Communications was already that good, except it was done via the post office. It took a while. We were already turning global. I guess it's a universal to want to know people who unlike yourself. It's a universal to know people unlike yourself in safety. Watching your neighborhood turn bad is a different matter.
Hmm. If people are more connected to others around the world who maybe are different from them, or different cultures, different languages, do you think that that will increase understanding and therefore sort of make the world a safer place, a less violent place?
I think in many ways it's already done that, but people who don't use the technique aren't going to stop being violent.
Oh, yeah.
Duh. I mean,
hmm
there's no way I can see to force communication on anybody. Propaganda, the Soviet Union did a lot of that, and it has a lot of techniques that worked more or less.
Now that you mention it, the people that I know that seem to be the most, I don't know, prejudiced, I guess you'd say, are the ones that seem to be that communicate the least, or that at least beyond their own group.
Yeah,
Mm.
all true.
hmm there's a lot of work going on these days in life extension, and in your novel, A World Out of Time, which I've probably read 3 or 4 times, you explore a variety of forms of life extension, and I was wondering if I could get you to talk about that. First of all, of course, it opens with a guy waking up from cryogenic preservation. Do you have any confidence in cryonics?
Beats the snot out of me. It's again a technique people will be looking for until they find it.
Mm-hmm.
Improving it probably in great ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Heinlein predicted that too in The Door into Summer. The technique the main character used would drop you to the temperature of liquid nitrogen. 50 years later, they're dropping them to a notch above absolute zero.
Mm. You haven't signed up for it, though, I don't suppose.
I have not.
Okay. Okay.
This could be simple laziness, but present techniques, there's a certain amount of disintegration, and there's the organ bank problem. The problem that it must be vastly easier to revive a patient in pieces for organ transplants than it is to revive the whole man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your organ bank, you've covered that in a number of stories, and it was a huge political problem within the stories. Do you anticipate it to become I mean, I already know. I mean, we've already heard stories in the news of people being kidnapped and their organs taken.
You've been reading about China? The state has been executing patients for the organ banks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's already a problem. Do you think it'll become a bigger problem?
Unless better techniques are created for extending lifespan, such as cloning one's organs and fast growing them so that you can get a new liver before you die. Unless some such techniques outrun the organ transplants, we're going to have a problem. I can anticipate the first of the United States to execute criminals for the organ banks will be Florida. Population of elderly and a lot of crime.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. There'd be a bit of an outcry, though, I would think.
I would think you will get a bit of an outcry. Yeah, you get a bit of an outcry now from reports when reports come in from China.
Yeah, yeah. What about stem cell research? I know it's a bit controversial because, you know, some of the best stem cells apparently are taken from embryos, and so it's tied in with abortion and stuff. But what's your notion of the possibilities of it? Is it something that maybe could offset the need for organ transplants, regular organ transplants?
You used the word offset. Let's say that extending a man's life now, he'll still need an organ later.
Oh, okay. So it might actually contribute to the problem?
It's not an offset, but the old every technique for extending our lifespan extends the problem too.
So no solution there.
Not really.
Okay. Some of the methods in A World Out of Time for extending life were beyond our way beyond our ability. One of them was, of course,
we don't have teleportation.
Yeah, teleporting.
I did my damnedest to make teleportation work alongside everyday high school physics, and I almost succeeded, but I couldn't get teleportation to square with rotational conservation of rotation.
Yeah, it was fascinating the way you described it. And kind of a side note, the propulsion device you used for moving the planet Uranus near the end of World Out of Time, how in the world did you come up with that?
I just noticed various stories in which the Earth was moved, and they always would have destroyed it too. At least it read like they would do that.
For anyone who's not familiar with the story, the listeners, basically it was a thermonuclear device that was mounted in the upper atmosphere, if I remember right, as sort of a rocket engine, but it would produce an explosion which would then thrust the object against or lowered into the atmosphere, which would produce push against the planet.
It was a free-floating Orion-style fusion device floating in Neptune's atmosphere, and the idea was to move Neptune close enough to Earth to pull Earth out of its orbit, without destroying the surface of the Earth.
It was brilliant.
The reason it doesn't destroy the surface of the Earth is tides decrease as the inverse cube. You lose a lot of the effect just with distance.
Yeah, it was fascinating stuff.
Now there's an outfit talking about how to move the Earth when it becomes necessary, and their method is to drop the moon in front of the Earth over and over and over again. Move the moon and let the moon move the Earth.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if they got the idea from World Out of Time. It's conceivable.
Yeah, it could
Probably a better method. Likely to be cheaper. Likely to be less dangerous.
Have they figured out how they're going to move the moon?
I remember yes, but I don't remember what the method was.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you about, of course, almost every science fiction writer has to use faster-than-light travel. And, of course, you've used it a great deal in your stories. Do you think that we will ever develop faster-than-light travel?
I guess I don't. And the optimistic view is faster-than-light travel is impossible. That's the optimistic view, because if FTL were possible, we'd be invaded damn quick by superior beings. The universe is already too old to have any confidence that we're the oldest intelligent tool user. Somewhere out there are the tool users, and if they had faster than light travel, they'd be tearing up the solar system without our permission.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, what's your take on the SETI, what do you call it, the Fermi paradox? Where is everybody that we haven't been able to detect anyone? Do you think we're just not able, but they're really out there?
I made a list once upon a time of possible answers to that, and some of them are more pessimistic than others. There might be a lifespan on tool users. It might be caused by they use up their resources, or they fight with each other using better and better weapons.
Mm-hmm.
The one that scares me is we learn to play with genetics and attempt to improve ourselves. I'd really like to see a lab that does that set on the moon where it can do less damage. Unfortunately, we don't have moon base. We were supposed to have the first baby born on the moon in 2001, you'll remember, according to Arthur Clarke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Didn't happen. So the experiments in genetics that will be used to attempt to improve the human being are likely to happen in, Chile.
Mm-hmm. Improving the human being, do you see that as a danger because of
Mistakes. Mistakes would be easy.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the outcome of the mistakes? I mean, we're not talking about Khan Noonien Singh or something from Star Trek. We're talking about diseases or pathogens or what?
Yeah, something that kills after the third generation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. So a genetic modification that's an improvement now, but then later the creature turns out to be sterile or self-destruct genetically?
Or psychotic.
Oh, okay.
Or brilliant and psychotic.
Mm-hmm. Back to physics, though. A lot of physicists are beginning to see cracks, they call it, in the standard model. Do you think that the current level of physics will ever be, I don't know, not abandoned, but a new layer, layer overlaid the top of it so that we understand the universe far better than we do now?
That's the best guess, yeah. We understand the universe fairly well now, but there's room for improvement.
Well, do you think that we'll ever understand the universe and its structure? And I'm thinking not just large scale, but fine structure, like down the Fermi level and not the Planck scale, so thoroughly that we. Mm-hmm.
My fear is when they've got the answers finally right,
Mm-hmm.
I won't understand it.
Well, I suppose that's a possibility. But I'm wondering, do you think they'll be able to, if they understand it so thoroughly, do you think they'll be able to change the laws of physics within the universe or even make another universe?
Find loopholes? Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We certainly found loopholes once we bit the bullet and believed in quantum theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that took a while.
Yeah, but the results have been ferocious.
Mm-hmm. Back to the possibility, though, of making another universe. Do you think that's possible, to creating an entirely new one?
The present understanding of the universal laws suggests that if we made another universe, we wouldn't be able to look into it. It just wouldn't do us any good. We could speculate that we had made another universe, but how would you get instruments into it?
Oh, I see, yeah.
This seems to be fundamentally impossible. You know, time doesn't get invented until our universe forms. Getting into another universe would involve sideways, twisty time travel.
Yeah, it would tend to sort of isolate us or separate us from it. Let me ask you, the aliens called outsiders, this is also sort of a physics-related question. The aliens called outsiders in your novels used a reactionless drive. That's different from a faster-than-light drive.
Yes.
How did you come up with that, and do you see that as something that's maybe possible or just a nice invention for stories?
It's just a storytelling technique. The kind of stories I wanted to tell required a faster-than-light drive at a certain level, and so it's in the stories. and it's in the known space assumptions, but way late. Thruster drives, faster than light drives, they're developed after Beowulf Schaefer's time, way late in known space.
And the same, I guess, goes for the gravity break, I believe it was called.
Yeah, I needed it for a story.
Okay. Let me ask you about robots. Robots, especially in war. Today, battle robots are made by hobbyists, for spectator sports. Do you anticipate, and if so, how soon, that they might replace human soldiers in fighting wars?
What's being replaced in the way of soldiers is replacing pilots instead. We've got little airplanes driven by computer fans, by computer operators, and it was done with the DCX too. So a working rocket ship was run by an astronaut who was sitting in a building nearby. So that is at least the direction we're going now. Flying devices. I suppose a tank could be automated too.
I'm wondering if flying robots are used as weapons and they're made smaller and smaller, say down to the size of, say, I don't know, like a fly.
Housefly.
Yeah, like a house.
Let's go housefly.
Yeah, and you put a tiny warhead in it. You could just fly it at somebody and shoot them with the fly.
Yes, I was told about explosives that are somewhere between a chemical explosive and an atomic explosive. These are chemicals, but tailored to produce a bigger bang. A housefly is big enough to kill a man if you get it close enough.
Yeah. So is that something that you anticipate? I mean, I could imagine releasing, I don't know, thousands
they will
of them.
exist. They will exist. I can't anticipate how they'll be used.
Mm-hmm. There was talk, of course, a lot of talk 10 years ago during, Desert Storm, of smart weapons, and then they started talking about brilliant weapons, and the concept being that you could send them into a battlefield without telling them where the targets are, just tell them what the targets look like, and they would find them and destroy them.
Sure.
So, I mean, that was an actual military project, and I guess it's still ongoing. I don't know.
I believe so. It's the basis for Thor, too, which it doesn't exist. Thor was crowbars from orbit.
Oh.
And the idea was that the crowbar would seek out a shape such as a tank viewed from above.
Mm-hmm. And by falling from orbit, it would have enough momentum to destroy a tank.
Yeah, 4.5 miles per second, and no warhead. It's just the kinetic energy.
Mm-hmm. You're familiar with the exoplanets. I guess over 200 have been found so far. Have you been following progress on that?
Oh yeah.
A lot of them are hot.
Yeah, hot Jupiters are being found because they're the easiest ones to find. They're close enough to wobble the star and big enough to wobble the star, and that's how they're found.
Yeah. Do you believe that life, not as we know it, could develop at temperatures other than normal Earth-type temperatures?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't do any research myself. I just believe what I read. And what I read is water is the most versatile of molecules, and carbon is the most versatile of atoms, and life is therefore likely to be carbon and water. But nothing else seems impossible to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've wondered if maybe oceans of iron might be common on these really hot planets, and of course, iron can dissolve carbon very readily. That's how we make steel, and so I've kind of wondered if maybe oceans of iron might have life in them.
Go ahead and write the story.
You wouldn't dispute it?
I wouldn't dispute it if you wrote it well enough.
Okay.
Make me believe it for the duration of the story.
Mm-hmm. I wrote a speculative article, not a story, with this concept in it. In fact, it was in Jim Bain Universe magazine about a year and a half ago. My notion was, and so I'm kind of like to get your take on it, my notion was that oceans of iron are common in the universe, that life can form in them, and that Of course, some of the oceans in the universe are underneath a crust, like on Europa, which we believe has liquid oceans, liquid water.
Liquid water, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I extrapolated those two concepts into the concept that, well, the Earth has an ocean of iron underneath its crust, very, very deep.
Yes.
And that I wondered if it's even remotely possible that there could be living things down there that we will never see because we can never send instruments that deep into the Earth that could survive. Because we're not talking about, 5 miles or 20 miles. We're talking more like, 200 or 300 miles where it's liquid.
I think you're right. If it's possible for life to emerge in the iron ocean inside Earth, we're never going to know it. After all, the pressure is too great. The iron you're talking about is mixed nickel and iron, right at the center.
Yeah, maybe even deeper than I was imagining. I was thinking maybe 500 or 1,000 miles down.
Iron sinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There are a lot of advances going on in medicine. Of course, the Human Genome Project was completed in 2003. They've gone on to include mice, chimpanzees, even Neanderthals. I don't know if you'd heard about that one. They're working on doing the Neanderthal Genome Project. What's your take on the advances that are going on in medicine?
That sounds like fun. It'll tell us quite a lot that we've been speculating about. A lot of answers that I never thought would emerge. When I was growing up, I knew that we would never know how the dinosaurs died. I just knew that. It was in all the literature. Speculation was there. There weren't any answers. We're finding out things we've been wondering about for all of my lifetime. And then again, for all of humanity's lifetime, too.
There does seem to be a bit of an explosion, really, of knowledge these days.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Speaking of which, what's your take of Wikipedia? It's up to 2.5 million articles now. I don't know if you're familiar with it or if you read it.
Yes, I'm familiar with Wikipedia. I've used. I think it's great. I think you do have to be skeptical of the truths in Wikipedia. If you really need to know an answer, you look elsewhere too. And my reasoning is I know Jerry Pournelle has corrected part of his biography in Wikipedia and had somebody correct it back.
Was it vandalized or just an error?
No, it's just somebody who's sure he's right.
So he's got his own little edit war going on.
Yeah. Which I believe he has given up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was talking to Joan Spitzy a couple of years ago before Fred Saberhagen passed away, her husband, and she said that his listing in the Encyclopedia of Science Fiction said that his name was Frederick, but his name's not Frederick; it's just Fred.
Uh-huh.
So, but of course, you can't change that since it was a print edition.
Yeah. Whereas in Wikipedia, anyone can change it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the first time I told my father about Wikipedia, and my father's very devout Christian, and he said, "Oh, that sounds terrible." He says, "What would the article about Jesus look like?" Yeah.
What day?
Yeah, exactly. It would be the biggest edit war in the world, probably. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Let me ask you, do you believe that people will ever have computers surgically placed inside their bodies and wired into their brains?
I think that's possible. I remember when it was almost accepted 20 or 30 years ago, and then somebody started asking, where do you find the cavities to put the computer elements?
Mm-hmm.
But what I think now is you don't have to make a lump. You can make a sheet of elements, thin and maybe porous, and just peel back some scalp and put it in the top of your skull. Wires trailing down to wherever you want them. And yeah, I think it's possible.
When I mentioned this or asked this of Joe Haldeman, he said that he anticipates that someday there may be a, what would you call a pressure, social pressure for people to become wired in their minds for communication, because if you're a business person and your colleagues are wired so that they can access the internet within their own brains, within their own minds, and you can't, you're at a disadvantage.
Of course, there's always been social pressure to be in communication. When I grew up, I was taught how to write thank you notes, and I was taught to do it always. Communication is a social pressure. How else would you convey social pressure than with communication? And the better communication gets, the more it alters. I don't have to write "Dear Sir" at the beginning of a email. Email has become quicker. The salutations get left out.
Yeah, I've noticed that I usually put them in, but then after I know the person a while, I start dropping them out. I start leaving them out.
Yeah.
Do you think that you would be willing yourself to have a computer implanted in your body and wired into your brain?
Yes. I flinch from learning how to use it. But then I flinched from learning how to use the camera I bought a little while ago.
Yeah, I got a cell phone that had a manual with it 250 pages long.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know how to use my cell phone very well. I know how to make phone calls.
Mm-hmm. If you were guessing, and I'm sure it's just a guess, but how far in the future do you think it might be before people have computers wired into their brains?
How many people?
Well, I wouldn't expect it to be everyone. Early
maybe
adopters,
maybe it's 6. Maybe it's Bill Gates and 5 others, and a sultan in among the Saudis.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the answer, then 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you mean hundreds of thousands of people, then it's not 30 years. It's 40.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Okay. Takes a while for it to seep in. Yeah, right. Is that because of the price differences? The price would be prohibitive, or because of the...
Of course.
Ah, okay.
Of course, because the price drops as the product becomes more prevalent. Price drops as the product gets reworked, redesigned.
Well, let me go one step beyond hardwired into their brain, computers. That is, do you think people will ever augment themselves so much that they will be mostly or even entirely artificial?
I think a few will. I don't think it will become popular. After all, there's no reason to think that Larry Niven transcribed into a computer is the Larry Niven.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about artificial intelligence. Some people believe that artificial intelligence is impossible. First of all, do you believe it's possible? And also, roughly when do you think you might be able to converse with a computer the way you do to your friends?
I thought we'd have it now. Believed what I was being told.
Mm-hmm.
There is a phenomenon that's blocking us, and it goes like this. I figure out what an aspect of intelligence is. Somebody else works on a computer and busts his ass seeing to it his computer can do that. My reaction is that wasn't really intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of that over the decades. I don't know when it will be decided that we've got intelligence. I suppose when they start demanding civil rights, somebody will say somebody wrote a program to get it to demand civil rights.
Well, some of the people who talk about artificial intelligence, especially those that believe in the singularity, they believe that eventually the computers, that is to say artificial intelligence, will be so intelligent that it'll start improving itself, sort of programming better versions of its own self so that it will become a runaway
Sure.
super intelligence. Do you anticipate that that's possible?
Sure. I believe its redesigns will require more elaborate computers. I mean, computers with greater capacity. Every programmer wants more capacity than he's got to work whatever he's working on. And I don't see why computers wouldn't have that problem too. But there's another problem you better look at.
What's that?
A computer program can fission or can be added to other programs. There's no way you can give civil rights to a computer program, because there's no telling how many individuals it can fission into when it's time to vote. Definitions become impossible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now suppose I've got a computer in my head. Is that computer me, or is that computer its own individual? Does it get a vote?
Also, there are other civil rights besides voting. There's protection.
Yes.
You might have to make it illegal to erase an artificial intelligence.
Yes. What constitutes murder?
And then there's ownership rights. Of course, we allow corporations, which are not human, to own things, but
yes,
but that's different. You're allowed to kill a corporation.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe that the singularity, and I'm guessing that you're familiar with it. Do you believe that it's something that's coming, that's a real thing to be interested in, or even fearful of?
When we approach the singularity, there's going to be a game of definitions, arguments over whether we actually got there. The answer is, I don't know. Every science fiction writer seems to be aware of the singularity problem, and every one of them wants to write about it. We're not all good enough.
Yeah, it's naturally hard to write about something that's supposed to be smarter than you are.
Yes.
Have you tried your hand at the virtual reality called World of Warcraft yet?
No, I've not.
Any virtual reality game type things?
Let's see. I played, what are their names? Quake. And I played Halo, yeah.
I haven't tried that one myself, yeah. Were you any good?
I've not played it all the way to the end. No, I was not very good at it.
Okay. Let's see. Let me jump down a little bit. There's a question that I've been wanting to ask. I checked the Internet Movie Database Pro, which has contact information and stuff like that. It's got more information than most. There are a lot of rumors about a movie being made of your novel, Ringworld. I couldn't find any information at the Internet Movie Database. Is it true? I know you've sold the rights, but...
I sold the rights decades ago to a man named Robert Mandel. And what Robert's working on right now, after a hiatus, is... No, I shouldn't give details. Let's say Mandel hasn't disappeared, and he's not working on a movie right now.
Okay.
But the rumors are rumors.
Okay.
And have no basis in current fact.
Okay. Mostly fueled by hope, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see a Ringworld movie. That would be incredible.
I would too.
Yeah. Let me ask you about energy. What do you think is the best answer to the world's energy problem? Or is there really one answer, or is it more of a group of answers?
Orbiting solar power satellites. And let's see. We really need a geothermal power plant in Yellowstone National Park.
I think that'd be...
The reason is, you've heard of this, Yellowstone National Park is a caldera.
Yeah.
It's a gigantic volcano ready to destroy most of the Earth if it goes off like a bomb. You want to drain the energy out of Yellowstone National Park. We really need a geothermal plant.
I don't think I've...
Or 1,000.
Okay, I don't think I've heard anybody suggest that. I think there might be a lot of opposition based on the notion that we should be...
Yeah, tell me about it. But people who want to keep the world the way it is are not taking good account of Mother Nature. Yellowstone National Park is a bomb waiting to go off.
I haven't really heard of it being described as dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
But I do know that in the past it has blown up.
Been on your television set.
Oh, okay.
After all, I don't do my own research. I just believe what I read and see.
Yeah, I know that in geologic time, very, very, very long time ago, I don't know if it's several million years ago, I believe, it blew up, and I believe more than once. Yeah. What's your take on, say, solar cells and wind and things like that? I
live in a windy place. I think I would not like seeing propellers in my neighbor's lot. But maybe I'd want to put up one of my own. It's a matter of aesthetics. You can get used to almost anything. That's for wind. For well, I like the OTEC notion. I'd like to see a lot more OTEC systems, and I don't see any, and I don't know the answer. Maybe it's because the energy isn't great enough. The OTEC system, if I've got the right pronunciation and the right letters, is Ocean Thermal Difference Plant. You're taking advantage of the temperature difference between the surface of the ocean and the bottom of the ocean. The bottom of the ocean is at 4 degrees centigrade because that's where water is densest. Your top is whatever you like, depending on where you want to put your plant. Call it the equatorial oceans. You run cold water up to drive a turbine and pump it back down, and that's where your power comes from. And that's also how you get warmer water down to the bottom to start a rising current. One of the side effects is a bloom of fish. Fish just love the nutrients that have been sequestered in the bottom of the ocean. So you get a fishery going.
I've heard of that, but I really haven't heard about any proposals to use it. I think I read about it in Science News years ago. Or not Science News, Popular Science.
Let's see if I can just glance at the book, but I think it's called the Millennium Project.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just glance at my shelf.
Okay.
All right, I don't see it on my shelf, so I can't tell you the author.
Okay, well, that's
but
fine.
The title is the Millennium Project. And it begins not with colonizing other planets. It goes on to colonize other planets, but it starts with colonizing the equatorial oceans, which are pretty much deserts until you start putting in these islands that you get by precipitating metals out of the ocean itself.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually not just for energy, but also for fisheries and also for the
energy and colonization and practice for colonizing interplanetary space.
Oh, sounds interesting.
You've got isolated islands here that have to be self-sufficient. You eat a lot of fish.
And world fish production has been going down for different reasons. So this would help in that way too.
Yes.
Let me ask you a generic question. Is there something that you feel is coming in the future that worries you? Something maybe that I wouldn't even think to ask you about?
Yeah, a number of things. One of them is the matter we discussed of genetic tampering, possible mistakes. I'm less afraid of changing human beings than I am of a war bacterium getting loose. I'm afraid of kinetic energy. I'd like to see more being done to stop the next dinosaur killer.
Oh yeah, near-Earth asteroids.
Yeah, a lot is being done. It's very gratifying. Half the people working on it seem to have read Lucifer's Hammer at the proper age.
That's another good book of yours. I really enjoyed that one.
Thank you.
I'm curious. As long as we're talking about that, you've collaborated a number of times with Jerry Pournelle, and collaborations always give an author's novels a different flavor because, of course, there are two minds working on it, two styles.
Right.
What do you feel is the greatest strength that he brings to the novels when you guys write together?
He's more meticulous than I am, and not as crazy. He's counting on me for the madness. We've begun work on another book in which the Earth will be threatened by something large, and what he's made me promise, so he can put it in the outline we will submit. He's made me promise him another surfer. Everyone remembers the surfer, and the surfer isn't the kind of thing Jerry Pournelle comes up with. Jerry designs Todos Santos, the the great big building in Othafieldy. And I look at Todos Santos, and presently I put a high diving board at the edge.
Yeah. So you've got the wild cards you can throw in occasionally. Yeah.
Yes. His strengths are deep knowledge of a lot of things: military, political, literature, just a general vast expanse of knowledge in that man's head.
In the Mote in God's Eye, which of course is probably you guys' most famous collaboration, the feel is very different. It's sort of a dark, foreboding feel to it compared to the novels that you write alone, which I think have more of an optimistic take to them.
You don't find dark foreboding in Lucifer's Hammer?
Well, yeah, that too. But I usually, when I think of your writing, I guess I think of the ones that I love the most, and that's Ringworld and Ringworld Engineers.
Uh-huh.
And of course, Louis Wu is well, he's very old and he's got problems and such, but he's mostly optimistic.
Yes, Louis Wu is a generically happy guy.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's where I get most of that feel from then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the Mote in God's Eye, I mean, that was scaring me sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, there was some scary stuff in there.
That was our first novel. There's some Heinlein in there. I speak literally because Robert Heinlein did a proofreading job on A Mote in God's Eye.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
When we thought we were finished, by then Robert was emotionally involved and had committed himself. Maybe you know the story, maybe you don't. Jerry sent A Mote in God's Eye to Robert Heinlein when we thought we were finished, and on the strength of an old friendship. Robert sent back a long letter detailing changes he would like to see, including rip off the first 100 pages.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
And our agent said the same thing, so we did. And in the letter, Robert said, if you will do all of these suggestions well, I can say that this is the best science fiction novel I've ever read.
Wow.
So he was sort of committed when we took all his suggestions. And it had to be that good. Mm. So he did a full proofreading job on it. And made us swear never to tell anybody else until he was dead.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, I had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like dealing with? I mean, he's a bit of a legendary. I mean, I say a bit. He's a legendary figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly had to take everything he said seriously. But I remember I wrote him a letter defending the name Crazy Eddie for a legendary figure in the Mote legends.
Mm-hmm.
He thought it ought to have a name that was clearly alien.
Oh.
And I thought it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, apparently you won.
And I thought I'd won the argument for a while, but no, he just decided I couldn't be persuaded and gave up. He was still sure he was right.
Okay. The book that you and Jerry Pournelle are working on, or going to be working on, whichever. Can you tell us anything else about it, like the general notion of it, or a setting, or when it might be coming out?
Only that it's going to be a tale of rewriting civilization in order to build something that can stop a dinosaur killing.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, and I also wanted to ask you another generic question, and that is there something you feel that's coming in the future that makes you feel hopeful, as opposed to worrying you, that you're looking forward to, maybe?
Many things. I love the way knowledge accumulates. I like being able to develop new defensive weapons. I like quite a lot the notion of fighting a war with toy-sized airplanes driven by people off stage.
So that we don't kill people?
So that we don't kill pilots.
Mm-hmm.
You can still kill people.
Oh, okay. At least not our people.
Yes. I like very much the tendency I've been watching for all of my lifespan of being able to take military action against military targets without killing too damn many civilians. We just get better and better at that. Of course, terrorists are out to commit violence against civilians, and that isn't anything you can stop by persuasion.
Do you see any way to fight terrorists that has not been used already that would be maybe more effective?
If I did, I'd tell somebody. I'm a member of Sigma. There are science fiction writers involved in home security.
Yeah, I've seen a photo of several science fiction writers standing together. I remember Jerry Pournelle was with you in that photo.
Yeah, I'm in Sigma, and I'm probably one of the least important members because I'm not a very good warrior.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been in the armed forces.
Oh, okay. Well, occasionally it's good to have somebody that can contribute the wild cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're expecting some moment of madness from me that will change everything around.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Well, even if you're a member for 10 years and you only come up with one idea, that might be the one idea, so you never know.
As you say.
Well, that about comes to the end of the questions I have for you, but let me ask you before I let you go, do you have anything you'd like to talk about the future or whatever that I wouldn't even think to ask you about that maybe has been playing on your mind or you've been pondering lately?
Should I be talking about books of mine that are about to come out?
Yeah, if you have some books you can mention that are about to come out, that'd be great. Yeah.
Inferno, a book that Jerry Pournelle and I wrote 30 years ago, is about to be reissued. And a sequel will be out in February, called Escape from Hell.
Oh, okay. Is it being released sort of in conjunction with the sequel?
Sort of, yeah. A couple of months apart. Inferno will be out later this year.
Any other projects you're working on?
Yes, with Ed Lerner. Ed Lerner is a guy who popped up wanting to write stories set in known space. So we're doing a series of novels written around the backdrops for the short stories I've been producing for about 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So far, quite a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. As long as we're talking about projects, I'm curious, the animated series of Star Trek, the episode "The Slaver Weapon."
Yes.
It was based on, of course, your short story, which.
Yeah, I wrote that.
How did you get into that project? Did they approach you or?
I was invited.
Mm-hmm. How did that go?
I wrote several story treatments that were not accepted. One of them was too complicated. It involved many black holes and such.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was too bloody.
Mm-hmm.
It involved Kirk and a Xin fighting within Spock's mind, linked to be able to duel without actually dying. Mm-hmm. At any rate, it was finally suggested to me that I do the soft weapon as an episode, and I did that.
Yeah. Also, I see in the notes here on the Internet Movie Database that you wrote an episode of The Outer Limits, or it was based on one of your stories.
My name is on 3 episodes of The Outer Limits. In each case, the story editor did some work after I did, and in 2 of them, the story editor gets a credit. Mm-hmm. The story editor was David Gerald.
Oh, okay.
Whom I had already collaborated with.
Yeah. How did you enjoy that? Was it a fun project or was it difficult?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay.
Also frustrating in spots.
Oh.
That first episode, the one with just my name on it, it was his story idea until I wrote it, and then it felt like it was mine at any rate. And then they took out the Joker character. That's not quite what happened. What happened was the 49er miner was characterized by a new antique Winchester, because he dropped in from 1851. Mm-hmm. That's fine until it gets to the higher-ups in the company who vetoed the new antique Winchester because some kid might go looking for a gun after seeing the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, without the Winchester, we're kind of stuck. David said, "Let's turn him into a Civil War vet with a cannon, a new brass cannon. No kid's going to find one of those ready to fire."
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. I could go along with that. And the next thing I hear is they've taken out the river. Now the episode is characterized by a river that runs downstream, of course, but in a circle. Downstream in a circle.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now they're talking about changing it to a road, and I backed out at that point. And then I heard they'd put the river back in, and we're doing it with a blue screen.
Mm.
The river had gone out because doing it on location was going to be too expensive.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they did it with a blue screen, and I watched the stage as a raft bounced up and down on things that punched it from underneath.
I noticed on here also that, and I didn't know that they had done an episode based on it, but one of the stories that I enjoyed most of your short stories was In Constant Moon. Apparently that was an Outer Limits episode.
Yes, it was.
Did it translate well to the show?
Yes, it did.
Oh, okay.
The scriptwriter was a Niven fan, and he kept in touch by phone from Canada.
I'll have to look that one up because a lot of these are available on DVD. I need to see that.
Yeah, look that up. It was well done.
Mm-hmm. Also, I notice on here that you did a Land of the Lost episode, or 3 episodes.
Yes.
Isn't
that what we were talking about a moment ago?
No, we were talking about Outer Limits. Land of the Lost was a children's TV series.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I thought...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, something slipped in my head. The only Outer Limits episode I've done was In Constant Moon.
Oh, okay.
And that was not done by me as scriptwriter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So Land of the Lost is the one with the circular river.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to foul you up.
No, that's fine. A lot of the writers that I've talked to who have done any Hollywood or TV stuff, a lot of times they're really frustrated with it, but it sounds like you mostly had a pretty good experience with it. I
was frustrated by the meddling, and as must be apparent, I must have not liked it well enough to go on with it.
If you were approached to deal with the script for the rumored movie about Ringworld, would you be willing to go into that?
A rumored movie about Ringworld? No, I think not.
Oh, okay. That would be a very big project and could be very frustrating.
I did, when there was interest in Ringworld as a movie, I shot my mouth off and I got ticked down properly for that. Apparently, people don't like to talk about a project when it's half done.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know that in the industry they use a lot of non-disclosure agreements, and they're all very legal and very complicated, and it can be a big rigmarole. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's about all the questions I have for you. I really appreciate you taking the time for the interview.
A pleasure.
That was Larry Niven. You can learn more on the officially sanctioned Larry Niven fan website, larryniven.org. That's spelled LARRYNIVEN.org. That's it for this episode of The Future and You. This program is licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivative Works 2.5 license. A copy of this license may be viewed at creativecommons.org. Briefly, this means you may, indeed you are encouraged to, copy this entire program as many times as you wish and give it away to as many people as you wish. But you may not copy only a portion of this program, you may not charge anyone any amount of money for it, and you may not use any portion of it to make something new. On the other hand, anyone whose obvious goal is to recommend the show to others automatically gets special dispensation. Offline reviews, which include the show's website, may include brief quotes. And online reviews, such as for a blog or community group or web page, which provide a conspicuous link to the show's website, may use as many quotes as they wish, up to and including a transcript of 1/2 of any interview. The show's theme music is a blues number called Some Sympathy by Chris Jurgensen and is from his album Big Bad Sun, which is available at magnatune.com. Magnatune is an independent record label that sells its catalog of music through online downloads and print-on-demand CDs. The company allows artists to retain full rights to their music and splits equally with an artist all the revenue from the sale of their work. All the music at Magnatune may be previewed free of charge, and customers can even choose how much they want to pay for the music, with the pricing ranging from $5 to $18 per album. You can learn more about them at magnatune.com. That's spelled magnatune.com. If you have a theory or opinion about what the future will contain, be it the near future or the far future, you may email it to me at thefutureandyou.com. That's thefutureandyou.com. You may also suggest topics that you would like to hear discussed, or send contact information for experts that you feel might provide valuable insights into the future. Mind you, an expert is not necessarily someone with an impressive degree. The best experts are the people who live or work or strive in the area under discussion. If the subject is science or medicine or academia, a degree is important, but if the discussion concerns trends in construction or firefighting or video gaming, a degree is pretty much meaningless. To get the inside dope, you've got to find the people who actually do this stuff every day. They are the first to see the trends because the trends have already begun changing their lives. As to the topics we will explore in the next episode of The Future and You, I can make no guarantees. Interviews are still being sought, recorded, and edited. All I can promise is that we will ruminate on the future. To learn more, check the show's website at thefutureandyou.com. If you enjoyed the program, please mention it to a friend, and be sure to join me again next time. Until then, I have been your host, Stephen Euin Cobb. On behalf of myself and all my guests, I thank you for listening.